Go to the next sheet. This is sheet 2 of the site plan. And the property, as I stated, has frontages both on River Avenue and also Arnold Avenue. The dimensions of Arnold Avenue, there's a 50-foot frontage and a depth of 151.53. On River Avenue, the frontage is 41.2 feet and the depth is 113.96 feet. The lot area is 10,625 square feet. And in the zone here, the lot requirement is 5,000 square feet, so it's double the requirement. The lot width for the zone is 50 feet along with the frontage, and we have the zone requirement is 50 feet also. The depth that's required per the ordinance is 100 feet. The depth we have is 151.5 feet. There's an existing building on the site. It's approximately 48.2 by 70.3, which is 3,382 square feet. The setbacks of the property, we have a front yard setback required for the ordinance is 0 for the zone. We have 0.7 feet for the front yard on Arnold. The front yard on River is the average setback of the street. We have no building on there, so that's not applicable. The rear yard setback required is 30 feet. We provide 61.3 feet. The side yard setback for the zone is 5 feet. Where this building is existing, it's 0 feet on the property line, and we're requesting a variance for that. The height requirement is 30 feet for the zone, and the building is less than 30 feet. The building coverage allowed for the property for the zone is 50%. We're providing 40.5%. The impervious coverage for the zone is 80%, and we're asking for a variance because the property is mostly impervious at 99.1%. We are, as you can see on the site plan, we're proposing an addition to the rear of the building, which is 691 square feet, which brings the footprint to 4,073 square feet for the building. Just to describe the rear of the property, we're proposing 10 parking stalls with access off of River Road. We have 16-foot light poles. There's 5 of them around the perimeter of the parking area. We are providing a 3-foot perimeter buffer, as you can see, around the side. We have our parking spaces. We have 9 by 18 parking spaces for the 5 that are located in the side rear portion of the parking of the side of the side property line. And as you can see, we provide also 1 handicap space, some striping. That area is going to be paved. Will be a paved area for handicap accessibility. We have on the other side, we have along the side of lot 1, we're providing additional parking spaces, as you can see there. 5 spaces. So we have a total of 10 spaces total for the site. We have, as you can see as you come out of the proposed addition, we're providing a refuse area, which is 4 by 6. Where we're proposing garbage cans and recycling cans in that area. And then for Pleasant Beach, the cans will be brought out to River Avenue alongside of lot 1's, where the area where they also put out their garbage. And in addition, we have, as you can see, we have landscape islands breaking up the parking areas. We have 18-foot, our travel lanes, we have an 18-foot wide travel lane coming off of River Avenue, which we're requesting a variance for because it's 20 feet is required. We have, in addition, We are at the entrance of River Avenue. If you can scroll down, John, for me. We're relocating the driveway to the north. So as a result of that, we have to restore with pavers to match the streetscape that's in front of on River Avenue and also Arnold Avenue that exists today.
Tim, what is your dotted line for your 3-foot mulch area? What separates that from the gravel?
We will, we'll have to provide a landscape border to maintain the mulch area and the gravel area to ensure that it keeps the travel lanes defined. And now in addition, as previously discussed with the architect, there'll be the concrete wall, which will run along the edge of that rear property line and then taper down as it gets closer to River Avenue as per the ordinance to allow proper site distance to get it in and out of the driveway.
So for into that 3-foot buffer, that wall will have a thickness of, I don't know, 6 inches or something like that?
8 inches. And we could have it on the property line and coming towards our property. So you'll have 8 inches. So you'll have another 8 inches is approximately 0.7. So you'll have about 2.3 feet of area, mulch area against the wall there.
Right, when they say that it tapers down for pulling out of that driveway, I guess, right? Is that what they're referencing? And it'll have to, Mr. Jackson before I think said that wall buffers both properties behind fully, but it really won't go all the way to the end of the corner lot there because it'll have to stop at some point for sight lines.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly wouldn't go to the property line. Certainly you want to be able to, as you're exiting the site, being able to see north onto River. So I was thinking about it a little bit. Probably it might be an idea to step it down more or less in line with the architecture building, you know, whatever that setback is, step it down there to some more reasonable height where you'll be able to see through there.
And Mr. Lurie, have you thought of that already, how that would work?
Yeah, well, right now there's an existing 6-foot fence along the back of Mr. Curcio's property. So we would like to taper that fence down to be 6 feet to maintain the same height he still has in his rear of the property, which would be our side of the property.
Okay, please continue.
Sure. The waivers we're requesting are we're doing a waiver for the off-street parking and loading. Shall have curbing. We're requesting a waiver not to have curbing because we have a gravel parking area. And as a result of the gravel parking area and the curbing will allow us, we're asking for a waiver for the 18-foot wide travel lane, which will allow us, if we don't have the curbing, allows us a little extra space in the travel lane to provide safe vehicle access to access the back of the property. In addition, we have a variance for the sign setback. The sign is located right in the landscape island on River Avenue. We have a setback of 3 feet off the property line for the sign. The sign area itself is less than the required 50 square feet that's required by ordinance. So it seems like a natural spot to have it in that landscape island for signage into the property. The parking, as previously stated, we have 10 parking spots. We're anticipating 1 parking spot be dedicated for each hotel unit, and then that will allow actually 2 spots for the downstairs tenants and 1 spot for the handicap accessibility. The The requirement for the parking is 39 is required for according to the calculations in the ordinance. And we're requesting a variance for that difference in parking, because the rationale to it is across the street on River Avenue, we have a municipal parking lot. As you go further down Arnold Avenue, there's a municipal parking lot, and as you go down Bay Avenue, there's another parking lot, and that helps to bring the vibrancy to the area where people can park and walk into and see all the different stores and to getting to their destination.
And just say again your designation of the parking.
We're anticipating designating one space for each of the units, so that's 7 spaces. And then providing one space for each of the tenants, which brings us to 9. And then we have 1 handicap spot.
Thank you.
And Tim, can you more fully describe the ingress and egress? So the parking spaces are on the diagonal. Obviously, I'm pulling in to park my car, but the diagonals are facing the other direction. So can you just go through and describe to the board how you envision vehicles accessing the parking lot, getting in and out of there, please?
Sure. We moved the driveway to the north to allow just to ensure we didn't want to put any parking spots on the rear of the property, which borders the neighbors. So we moved the driveway furthest north as we can. You enter into the site, and you would pull into the site, and we have the striped area by the handicap area to be a turnaround drop-off area, and then you could pull out of that spot, and then come traveling out of this site. We angled the parking spaces along lot 1 to enable easy access for them to leave the site. In addition, the spaces that we have along the side, the 5 spaces along the side of the property, we have them as just perpendicular parking, so you could be able to just pull straight in and then pull out of them and be able to exit out of the property.
Is there any Ray, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, my first time to this place, I drive 2 hours down the parkway and I pull in. Is that intuitive that I'm going to know to go to how do I know that I have to go do that to turn around to pull into one of these spots that's angled in the wrong direction from the way I pulled in? I'd be like, oh, I gotta somehow back into the spot. I wouldn't even, not smart enough.
Yeah, it's true. At first I said, well, why are they in that direction? So there is some new urbanism where they're in urban areas, they're actually having you back into diagonals so that you can pull out, then you don't have to back out. That certainly hasn't come to Point Pleasant Beach, but so I get your point. I kind of felt the same thing. I was wondering if they should have been diagonaled for the ingress rather than diagonaled for the egress. But I guess you'll figure it out. I mean, it's not a big parking lot, certainly.
Yeah, we were just having them diagonal for the exit out of the property to make it easier, because we're anticipating that they can come into the hatched area by the handicap spot because it's oversized there, and they needed to pull their suitcase out or whatever, and then be able to exit to their assigned parking spot. They could just easily maneuver out of that spot and then come around, and we can assign the spots with signage for unit 1, 2, 3, and they just go to their assigned spot.
And certainly what I would say is that from the point of view of River Avenue, any pedestrian traffic or cars entering the site, if the diagonals were faced the other way, someone might be so inclined to try to back out, then back out onto the sidewalk, back out onto River Avenue. Whereas when they're facing in the egress position, they'll back out into the parking lot, which is obviously very low volume, and then they'll proceed out of the site facing forward. So from that perspective, it kind of limits the amount of stupidity that can take place.
Yeah, I get it. I guess when I download my key, I want my tips for the site, and one of the tips for the site will tell me how to get into my parking space.
The next item is this to discuss a little more the refuge area. As you see, located along the rear of lot 1, there's a 4x6 refuse area where we can fit 2 cans, a recycling can, and at night they can wheel them out to Arnold, to River Avenue, where they get picked up by the municipal garbage services that we have. The interior of the 2 units, the 2 commercial units inside can certainly take their garbage nightly and bring it out to Arnold Avenue, which is picked up every day also. And we have, if there was ever a need, and just talking with the owner of the property, that's what they stated, that the garbage would be not a lot of garbage. So we do have room where that's staged there, that if we ever needed to, we could expand that along that 3-foot strip or 4-foot strip in there along the side of the side of lot 1. So in addition, as you can see, we have bollards all around there to
Where actually, Mr. Laurie, where would the garbage be on River Avenue? I don't see it. Where is that?
Well, they would have to bring out, currently now, lot 1 brings their garbage right where we say meet existing concrete curb, right where the
Oh, yeah.
the red maple is. They bring it right out to there. So
Okay.
we would just maintain it to keep it easy for our public works guys to be able to collect it all together.
All right.
Again, operationally, Tim, how does a hotel guest's garbage make it to the garbage spot and then to the street? That's going to be testified to from the hotel operator?
Yes.
Right, because I mean, low amount of garbage, but I mean, if you get some takeout and you know, go back to your room, do whatever, I mean, a couple of days stay, there has to be ways for people to manage that and to understand how the rooms what they'll do with their garbage, how it'll be collected, how it'll get down to your holding area and then out to the street. So, especially when it's a deskless, you know, we're going to have to obviously hear about the operations further. So
Yeah, just give you a preview of that. This will have daily hotel staff there on a regular basis, and the rooms will be maintained and attended to daily. It's just that you're not going to have a desk. So we'll get into that with the operation, but this isn't just people will not just be on their own.
Is that Mr. Jackson? You just gave that statement?
yes, he did interject with answering my question.
But he's testifying, and he shouldn't be doing it.
Understood. We'll move along to we'll have the operator's testimony.
That's what we need.
Okay, we're moving along. Go ahead, Mr. Laurie.
As previously stated, we have 16-foot high light poles, as you can see around the perimeter of the site. The board engineer has asked for a point-by-point lighting diagram, which we will provide. And in addition, now with the wall, we'll be redesigning the lights along the rear of the property into the wall, and we'll provide him point-by-point illumination levels that are satisfactory to him. In addition, for the parking spaces, we will delineate each of the parking spaces by the curb stops as shown on the site plan. And we have in the landscape in the islands in the landscape islands for the parking, we're proposing just low-level plants and mulch to help break that up and make it look nicer. So basically, that's the whole site plan. If there's any questions.
I just have a
Mr.
quick
Lawyer.
question, right?
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Dixon.
Is there a requirement from the town for a commercial building that the parking lot area or driveway be paved and not stone?
The ordinance just talks about curbing, not pavement. So no.
Okay, thank you.
I'll have to look at that because I thought all commercial parking lots have to be curbed and paved. But I could check on that. Of course, if you do pave the lot, Mr. Dixon, then what comes with that is the increased runoff and the management of same.
I did forget one waiver, which is the parking lot area, which was in Mr. Savickel's letter, where we have more than 30% of the lot is for parking. And that's a result of our building size being less than the required amount for the ordinance.
One of my concerns would be come snow time, where that snow is gonna go, and when you plow it out and you're gonna take half the stone with it out onto River Avenue.
There are some areas where we have the 3-foot perimeter buffer around the perimeter of property, which could handle some of the snow, not a blizzard, of course, but they could certainly be able to pile up the snow along in that 3-foot buffer area.
Any other board members have questions, Mr. Laurie?
I just have one more, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Rick.
So, Mr. Laurie, you heard one of the board members mention about maintaining the separation between the mulched area and the pavement area. So would the applicant consent to putting like a flush curb in there to make sure that we keep that separated along that the entrance roadway on the?
I'd have to review that with them versus some type of landscape feature, PVC barrier that goes into the ground versus a curbing.
Well, whatever you put in, it would have to be able to be driven on and plowed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Darrell's indicating we would work with you on that.
The applicant has indicated that we'll come up with some
Okay.
options for.
For the next meeting.
Correct. For the next meeting.
Mr. Liston?
Laurie, most of this parking lot is gonna be gravel, is that correct?
That is correct. It's gravel now.
Okay, and, did you put the plan back up? Because I wanted to refer to it, I was starting to. I got Mr. Lawrie. That's good. Nothing, not good looking, Mr. Laurie, but this is what we're working. Can I have the one that's like more of a close-up, please? Actually, when it really zooms in on the parking lot and that L-shaped gravel is what I want to talk to. That's better. Okay. No, that's good, right there. Oh, Mr. Lurie, you have these parking spaces, the 5 along, that are slanted, delineated with lines on your drawing. But how are you going to keep those lines on gravel?
Well, we have curb stops located for each one of the individual parking spots to help direct cars into that area.
Mhm. But there's not going to be anything that is going to provide a line so someone can see exactly how wide the space is?
We don't have that proposed, but you can certainly, I've seen where people have painted on the stones to help delineate even further, if the board engineer would certainly like that.
I would think, wouldn't it be better to put some solid type of either railroad tie type arrangement or PVC? No, PVC wouldn't work if you drove over it. Something to delineate the space. Because if someone comes in and doesn't see that, they can say, oh, well, I'll just take 2 spaces and pull in straight ahead. That to me is troublesome. And I think it really ought to be addressed. And perhaps the whole area ought to be paved. Although I can understand why.
Is this a nomination by Mr. Liston, or is this a question for Mr. Laurie? Because so far he's given a lot of testimony. I don't hear any questions.
I was pulling a John Jackson. I'm sorry. I withdraw that. Mr. Lurie, looking at the handicapped area, the handicapped spaces, parking spaces are paved, are they not?
That is correct.
Okay, so let's say that a handicapped person who uses a wheelchair pulls into that space and he's got to push his wheelchair on gravel to get to the entrance of the hotel. Is that correct?
No, it's paved all the way to the building.
Well, it's paved
That's-
in the building, but he's still going to have to go out onto the gravel to get into the door, to get into the hotel, no?
I have to look at if so, we would certainly just pave the access way right to the door and put a 5x5 landing at the edge of the door, so for proper ADA turnaround.
Yeah, I think that what you've got there isn't going to satisfy the ADA requirements, at least not as I understand. So that's something.
Is that your engineering opinion, Mr. Liston?
Pardon me?
Is that your engineering opinion?
No, it's just common sense. And I have seen a lot of plans, and I've never seen a plan where you'd have to go with a wheelchair on gravel to get from a paved.
Mr. Sprocius, I mean, I know you didn't allow me to do the testifying. I'd like to ask him to contain himself as well.
Understood. We'll make it ADA compliant, and they've already answered Mr. Liston that they would add whatever paving is necessary to make it work.
That's fine. Now, so we're getting back to the spaces. Is there any way that those spaces, that you think from an engineering standpoint, those spaces could be delineated either with some sort of a railroad tie arrangement or concrete arrangement, so that they wouldn't just, their delineation wouldn't disappear because it's only stone?
Well, that's the purpose of the curb stops, which are the elongated curb stops, which focus you to, as a person, to center your car right in front of the curb stop. So we're providing a curb stop for each space to help delineate each space.
But would they be better delineated if there was some other way to provide a line that's the 18 feet long along each space? So you could at least see where it was.
So, Mr. Liston, let me answer that. So I don't think it's atypical, especially in Point Pleasant Beach, where we have numerous gravel lots, where you have your wheel stops. People are not have driven cars before. I don't think if the board accepts it as a gravel lot, we're not gonna paint lines on the gravel. We're not gonna put railroad ties to delineate the spaces. The wheel stops will adequately delineate them. Mr. Lurie has just testified that each hotel unit will have its own parking space. Therefore, I would opine that there's gonna have to be some kind of signage which would indicate where your space is for your room, which would further indicate where you're supposed to park. So I think we should move on to the next.
That would certainly be helpful. That's a good suggestion. Mr. Lurie, I don't know that this is your area or not, but in the engineer's report prepared for the board, there's a paragraph 4B says applicant should provide testimony regarding structural integrity of the existing building. We note a previous application heard by the board regarding this property presented reports that noted significant structural deficiencies with the existing building. Discuss what rehabilitation is required. Does that fall within the ambit of what you're testifying to, or will it be a witness for that?
I'll jump in there and say, no, he's doing a site plan, and Mr. Cox already said that he met with building engineers or structural engineers to review the interior of the building. So I don't think that Mr. Lurie would be, site plan analysis would tell us if the building's going to stand up or not.
Well, no, but I'm just quoting from the engineer's report, and he said the applicant should provide testimony regarding structural integrity of the existing building. What Mr. Cox said was, I talked to a structural engineer. I think the structural engineer ought to be called. I mean, everybody.
The architect's opinion, and that's what we rely on.
That's okay. All right. No further questions.
Anyone else from the board have any
I got a thunderstruck.
additional questions?
Don't fix it.
Mr.
Anybody
Chairman,
from the pub? Mr.
I have-
Davis, go right ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Mr. Lurie, I'm going to ask your opinion regarding the parking lot in terms of efficiency, management, maintenance, snow removal. From an engineering standpoint, would you find that a paved parking lot versus a gravel parking lot is easier to maintain?
No. It's just a different type of material.
Okay, thank you.
John, you want to take that down real quick so I could see all the boxes? Any other board members at this time?